Janie Calhoun. I'm 68 years old.
Tell the jury, what is your husband's name?
Leslie Ball.
And how long have you all been married?
We've been married 10 years. We've been together 19 years.
So I want to start on this morning by telling the jury was Diane McIver to you?
Diane and Tex lived in the condominium next door to me, and we became really good friends. She was like a sister to me. We spent an awful lot of time together, so we were back and forth to each other's condo a lot during the week.
I'm going to show you a series of photographs. Tell the jury who is in Stacy's one.
Diane McIver.
And you told the jury that the two of you were like sisters. Tell them how is it that you first met Diane?
I had met Diane probably years back in the early 90s, but it was because of the legislature and Billy Corey, her employer. I had met her, but I did not know her personally. When we moved into our condo, which is next to theirs, that was in 2005, the end of 2005, and I met her again at that time, and then in 2006 we got to be really close. We spent a lot of time together.
And what was it about 2006 that brought you and Diane to be close friends?
Because we were neighbors, I think. We went out to dinner some, and just she and I were both a lot alike. We both were hardworking business people. We both grew up very poorly and worked our way up to where we're at in our positions. So it's we had a lot of the same things in common.
And as you continue to become closer to Diane and get to know her, do you also kind of get an understanding for who she is as a businesswoman?
Very smart. She was very strong. She had built Corey Industries, I felt like, to the point that it's at right now.
And you mentioned Billy Corey before. Tell the jury, who is Billy Corey?
Billy Corey is over, I believe it's more called U.S. Enterprises, but most everybody looked at it as Corey Industries.
And what is your understanding of what they do at U.S. Enterprises? Kind of work?
They had advertising. At one time they had a lot of liquor stores. They owned a lot of real estate. They did airport advertising, and that was one of Diane's big things she pushed to get forward, and it was a big opportunity for them.
Do you know what Diane's role was at U.S. Enterprises, what her sort of title was there?
She was president.
And in your time getting to know her and becoming close to her, did you did you learn her story with Corey when she started there?
She started back when she was 19 years old. She put herself through college at night and worked with, Corey the whole time, and just moved up within the industry.
Did you have occasion to get to know or meet Mr. Corey as you sort of developed your friendship with Ms. McIver?
I knew Billy Corey probably before Diane because of the legislature. I was a lobbyist at one time and was at the legislative sessions a lot, so I had heard about and met Billy Corey, attended a lot of functions with him.
And were Billy Corey and Diane close?
Yes, very close.
Describe for the jury a little bit more about that relationship. Was it boss-employee, or was it different in any way?
It was boss-employee, but Billy came over to her condo a lot during the week, especially after Austin, their godchild, was born, and Billy loved being around Austin too, so he would come over a lot at night and have dinner and see him when Austin was there.
And in your time getting to know Diane, did you also know the defendant, Mr. McIver?
Yes.
Tell the jury how you first met them.
I first met Tex back in 1997. Got to know him a lot better when he and Diane got married.
And did the couple have any children that you know of?
Tex and Diane not together, no.
Did Diane have any children from her previous marriage?
No.
What about Mr. McIver?
Yes.
Do you know how many?
He had 3 children.
Okay. And do you know about how old they were in, well, let's talk about 2016. You know about how old his children were?
I have no idea. I really don't.
That's allowed. You mentioned Austin. Tell the jurors, who is Austin?
Austin is Diane and Tex godchild.
And when did Austin come into Diane's life? You know.
Right after he was born, and that was in 2007, I believe.
Okay, and I showed you before, and it had previously been admitted, States Exhibit 4 and 5.
Yes.
Tell the jury, what are we looking at in States Exhibit 4?
That's Diane McIver and Austin Swall.
Can you tell about how old he is in this photo?
Looks like he's around 7 or 8.
Do you recognize where States Exhibit 5 is taken?
It looks like at the ranch,
Okay.
just from that picture.
Tell the jurors, if you would, a little bit about Diane and Austin's relationship.
He was like her son she never had. She loved him dearly. She and Tex both did.
In your time with Diane and becoming close friends with her, about how often during the regular week would you say that you saw Diane?
At least 2 or 3 times a week.
And how often would you see Austin there?
He was there at least a couple of times a week, sometimes more than that.
We just showed the jurors a photograph that you described as being taken at the ranch. Tell the jurors, when you say the ranch, what are you talking about?
It was in Putnam County. It was it was a big house. They had a lake out in front, and then there was I say a house behind the house. It was, they called it the saloon, but it had a bedroom and it had the stables for the horses, and that was there.
In your time getting to know both of them, had you actually been out to the ranch yourself?
Yes.
And when you would go out to the ranch, where would you stay?
If my husband was with me, we stayed out in the saloon, as they called it. It had a master suite out there. And if I went with just Diane and Tex, and sometime Dani Carter would go with us, I would sleep in Austin's bedroom in the main house.
All right. Tell the jury what we're looking at is States Exhibit 6.
That is the entrance as you're coming to, well, it's the fence that is around the property itself, and you see the front lake, and the house is at the back of that.
So just so you can orient the jury when we're looking at States Exhibit 6, and you can actually, if the court's monitor is working, you can actually press on the screen, make a mark. Tell the jurors how you would approach that property if you're pulling up there in a car.
To the left of the white fence, there's a cement driveway that goes into the drive where the house is.
So on the far left side of the image there.
Yes.
Exhibit 7. What do you see in States 7?
Yes, that's the driveway coming up to the house, and where the cars are parked out front, there's like a circular drive, and then to the left, it's where the car garage is.
Do you see the circular
Yes.
drive you're talking about?
Yes.
And this, the house that we're looking at in States Exhibit 9, is that what you're sort of describing as the main house?
Yes.
States Exhibit 11.
That is the driveway if you would be coming in or leaving the house. It's coming around the circle is where it is, and then there's a walkway that goes down to where the lake is.
And then the lake, sort of what you see there as you approach the property on the front.
Yes.
Are there any other bodies of water on the property?
Yes. There's a lake behind the saloon house.
And for the jurors who haven't been out there, how would you describe this saloon?
It was more an entertainment, I guess, and for their guests to stay in. It had a big, entertainment area with TVs, and then upstairs there was a master bedroom, and I think there were 2 more bedrooms.
And where is that in relation to the main house
It's exactly right behind it. There's a pool in between and a little walkway over to that house. This is the porch as you're coming into it's a screen-in porch that as you're coming into the back of the main house, and that door is the entrance into where the kitchen is.
Is the front of this area we're looking at actually screened in?
Yes.
Describe for the jurors as they're looking at this photo and some of the other ones we're going to look at. How is this property decorated?
Very Western, I was brought up on a farm in South Georgia, so to me it's very country also. You know, the signs that were depicted were a lot of things that you would see.
And State Exhibit 15, is that another angle of that same?
Yes, same back.
Right, what about State Exhibit 7?
That's still part of the screened-in back porch. It goes out to where the pool is, behind the main house.
The water that we see in 17 is at the pool?
Yes, yes it is.
State Exhibit 19, better angle. Do you see any areas in Exhibit 19 where there will be livestock, cattle, cows, horses?
It would be, I don't know if you can see me pointing, but it would be to the right side of where the pool is. But there's a fence, and the wood fence, and that's where the cattle and the horses are behind that.
When you're out on the property, did you ever horseback ride?
I did once or twice.
Do you remember about how many horses were on the property?
Oh goodness, I think there were maybe 8 or 10.
What about cows, do you know?
Oh, there were a lot of cows. I have no idea, but a lot. And a lot of baby calves, yes.
Do you have an idea, as you sit there, about the size of the property, about how big it was?
I think it was around 75 or 80 acres, I think.
What does it say?
That's the dining room in the main house.
Okay, and it says it's 22.
That would be that was their den area. It was right off the kitchen.
Also the main house?
Yes.
What about say it's 25?
This looks like Austin's playroom, which probably would have been a sitting area if a long time ago before Austin came along. But that was his toy room.
Okay, where you're walking into the front doors of the main house, where is the playroom?
It's on the left-hand side as you walk into the front door.
And then State Exhibit 26.
This is their area that looks back into the kitchen in the main house.
So through the sort of this walkway, that's the kitchen, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you see anything in State Exhibit 26 that you also associate with Austin, or Austin being here in the ranch?
His high chair that he sat in, probably until he was 8 or 9 years old. He loved those high chairs. He just loved them.
Obviously, Austin, the jury, we've been talking about Austin actually being out at the ranch. Tell the jury a little bit about Austin's birthday parties at the ranch. Have you ever been in attendance?
Yes.
And what were those like?
They were great parties for a little boy growing up. Petting zoo. A lot of his friends would come in from Atlanta and be at the party. And he pretty much, through Diane and Tex, met all of their adult friends, so there were a lot of all of us there at his parties also.
And who was responsible for hosting those parties?
Tex and Diane.
In State Exhibit 31, are we still looking at the main house?
No, this is the saloon house behind the house, I guess.
And what is just so the jury can get oriented, what's the perspective from this picture? Where is?
Okay, the door that is opening right there is coming in from the main entertainment area, and it's the stairs go up to the master suite.
As you're walking into this property, I think you told the jury you actually stay here yourself.
Yes.
What is on either side of the walls there, if you remember?
There's a TV on one side. There's a bar that's on the left-hand side. There's a pool table as you come right into that entertainment room.
And I'm sorry, I probably asked a bad question. It says Exhibit 31, what you see there, just right there in the stairwell. Do you remember what was depicted on either side of the walls there?
A lot of pictures. More pictures.
Guest house or main house?
That's the guest house. This is more where the stables and where all the working tools for the ranch were kept.
Horses out here?
Items for the horses were there, but the horses were mainly outside. This looks like it's in the wine cellar. Is where this is. Yes, in the wine cellar. Yes.
Where in the house or guest house is 641?
It's up under where the den living space is. They dug out up under the house and built it, but you enter it from where all the tools to work on the ranch. There's a door that goes into it from that hallway in the back.
Is it according to another angle the same?
Yes.
We can see a lot of wine in States 42.
Yes.
Who is the wine person?
They both were wine collectors. They knew a lot of people in the business, boutique wineries, and
Any particular kind of wine you recall?
a lot of different kinds. Reds, whites, cabs. You know, they love to collect wine.
In your time getting to know Diane and Tex and being out of this property, did you have occasion to drink wine with them?
Yes.
Both fans of red wine.
Yes.
Tell the jury what we see there.
That's the target practice mound.
And where, if you're coming up that front drive there and we're sort of looking at the main house in that circular area we talked about, where is this in relation to that?
It's further back on the property, back in the woods, in the property
Have you actually been
access.
out there yourself?
Yes.
Tell the jury what kind of goes on at the backside of the property where this mount is.
We would practice target shooting, either with plastic containers out there, or we had the target shooting, just, I don't know what you call them, but anyway, we would see how close we could get, I guess, to the dots on that.
And in your time out at the ranch, had you actually been out there to target practice or shoot with Mr. McIver?
Tex and Diane both were there.
In your time getting to know the couple and being friends with Mr. and Ms. McIver, did you have the occasion to see Mr. McIver have and use handguns?
Yes.
About how often would you say?
We didn't go target shooting every time I was there, but maybe if I was there once every couple of months, we would do it. I don't know if they did every weekend, but we would go target shooting when I was there.
And in your time target shooting or being with the couple while there's handguns, would Austin sometimes be around?
A few times he was there, yes.
And were you able to hear Mr. McIver talk to Austin or anyone else about gun safety?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
He was always very cautious with all of us, you know, making sure we held the guns down after we shot. Of course, I had never shot a 9mm, so I had problems with my hands pulling the revolver thing back, but he would load the gun for me. But yes, he was very good at teaching Austin all the safety, how to hold it, keep it down, don't point it up,
And talk to you about safety as well.
Yes.
In your experience out there, when he would talk to you and assist you with loading the gun, in your opinion, was he fairly knowledgeable about weapons?
Yes.
Discretion, Your Honor. Calls for speculation. Your Honor, she has a basis for personal opinion on that specific issue.
I'll lie based on the foundation laid.
How often would the two of you, would you say, about the same estimation that you gave to the jury before, about how often the two of you would be shooting or around weapons, you and Mr. McIver?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure, kind of I asked it weird. How often would you be around guns with the defendant, Mr. McIver? About?
I think I stated earlier, maybe if I was there twice, 2 times, 2 months, maybe we would go shooting one of those times. I don't think we went every time I was there, but I don't know how often they did it when I was not there.
Sure. One of the things, or one of the people you mentioned earlier was Dani Jo. Tell the jury, who is Patricia Carter?
She was a really good friend of Diane's. I think they've been friends for about 40 years.
And was she, from being friends with Diane, fair to say that you got to know her as well?
Through Diane, yes.
And what was her nickname? What does she go by?
Danny.
Okay. How often would you say that you saw Dani Jo either at the ranch or the Buckhead condo? About?
Okay, maybe once every couple of months.
Okay. And would some of those times be at the ranch, or are they almost exclusively at the Buckhead property?
I saw her more at the condo than I did at the ranch. I think Danny went to the ranch a lot more with her than I did.
We talked about the condo, and I think you told the jury that your condos were close. Describe sort of, if you would, for people who haven't been to your building, sort of the layout of your condos in relation to your McIvers.
Okay. Our building is a 58 unit building. It's sort of a small, not a high-rise. It had 4 units to each floor, and Diane had put 2 units together on the right-hand side of our floor, and then there was a lobby in between, and I had a unit on the opposite side, and there was one directly across from me.
And so did you all have to share an elevator?
No, there were 2 elevators that came up to each floor. It didn't just come off on your floor, it went to every floor in the building.
And was there a common hallway at all?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What was it?
This is the hallway between the 2 units that Diane had put together. So that was how you went from one unit into the other, unless you were outside in the hallway. They had 2 separate front doors. But
This is an internal image?
Yes.
Not you were calling it the lobby that separates your unit from those 2?
Correct. This was inside their unit.
Mm-hmm. And the image that we're looking at in 162, this is there because she made 2 condos, 1 condo, is that right?
Yes, correct.
And the table and the mirrors and all that, whose doing is that?
Diane's. Mm-hmm. That's our lobby area in between our units.
When you say our, who are you?
Well, Diane and Tex's unit, you're seeing straight in front of you, and then the 2 elevators are the dark elevators on the right-hand side, and then the section in the middle is our lobby that separates their units and mine and another lady that lived across from me. This is the living room of my condo.
Seating area there right when you walk in?
Yes.
For jurors who have not been into the McIver condo, how would you describe that unit? You told us it was once 2 and now 1. How else would you describe it?
The one unit on the left-hand side, if you're facing going into their units, was, I call it their main living condo. That's where their master suite was, their living area, kitchen. The unit that was combined on the right-hand side was more entertainment, big, huge TV, and it had a master suite on that side.
How did parking work?
We have parking levels that we pull in up under the building, and we have 2 parking spaces for each unit.
I'm showing you on screen right now 83. Do you tell the jury what we're looking at 83?
Okay, if you pull in to the front of our building, there's a visitor parking area that is on the main level, right as you go up under the building. So this is the parking for visitors.
And you actually have an assigned level if you're...
Yes, you go up through a closed gate, and we all have, there's like, I think it's 3 floors, really double floors, I guess it's 6 floors of parking. You have 2 assigned places.
Is Safety Exhibit 82 one of those areas or one of this area?
That's still the visitor parking.
Safety Exhibit 88. Tell the jury how you recognize that photo.
That is TEX McIver's SUV.
And in 2016, before Diane passed, do you remember about where the couple usually parked this vehicle?
Their parking is on the top main level. They had 4 parking spots because they had 2 units. And they were parked on the main level. P3, it's called to us.
Tell the jury, Ms. Calhoun, if you can, in your time getting to know Diane McIver, did you know her to loan people money on a regular basis?
She did loan some people money that were friends or that worked for her.
And tell the jurors, in Diane's terms, what was a loan? What did it mean to loan somebody money?
Well, she always wrote up the loan and made sure they paid her back.
And when you say wrote up, what's that mean?
It was usually a paper, loan that was written up between she and the person she was loaning money to. She did tell me that.
Did she ever talk to you about loaning her husband any money?
Only once.
Are you an argument of as to hearsay, getting into things that Mrs. McIver told this witness?
Your Honor, I don't expect the witness to, and I can rephrase my question so that I'm not going into any hearsay. I expect the answer to be not requiring hearsay, but I can rephrase if that's okay.
Okay. Why don't you rephrase, although be mindful that if the way in which this witness is answering the question is premised on hearsay, we may well get the same objection that probably sustained.
Did you know, without telling me about any conversations, did you know if Ms. McIver ever loaned her husband any money?
It's still an objection, Your Honor, same objection.
Right. I guess the trick here is you need to lay the foundation, and so if you want to ask, is the way you know that because Ms. McIver told you, then sort of the cat's out of the bag and we've got the issue. So I think you hopefully know how Ms. Calhoun would know that. If you have a good faith basis to believe it's something other than hearsay, you should keep going. Otherwise, different topic.
I understand. In your time with Diane, would she talk to you about personal things?
Yes.
Would you describe her as a private person, or tell the jury just a little bit about whether or not she would disclose to you personally?
Okay. State that again.
Okay, that was that question. Would Ms. McIver disclose personal things to you on a regular basis?
Yes.
And did that include things about her relationship with Mr. McIver?
In what way?
In any way. Would she talk to you about her relationship with her husband?
Yes. How much she loved him and that he was the right person for her when he came along.
And prior to you becoming close with, just so the jury can kind of understand, prior to you becoming close with the McIvers, you told them you actually knew Mr. McIver before, correct?
Yes.
Tell the jury, had you actually had a some sort of relationship outside of just a friendship with him before you became Diane?
1997, I had met Tex, and yes, we went out for a few months.
And this is before you knew Diane?
Yeah, yes.
Would you describe your relationship with him as boyfriend, girlfriend, or not even that?
Not really. It was such a short amount of time, and I was traveling a lot, and he was traveling a lot, so we did not see each other that much.
After that couple of months that you all went out, did you maintain a friendship after that?
I didn't see him much after that.
And why is that?
I was traveling, he was traveling. I was too busy. I had to do a lot of trade shows, so I was on the road a lot on the weekends.
And when Mr. McIver sort of came back into your life as a friend, was it with Diane or for some other reason?
It was I met him at the villas, I saw him at the villas where we lived the same weekend that I met my husband now.
And the villas, are we talking about the condo?
Condominium.
Sure. Did, to your knowledge, did Diane know about your previous dating history with Mr. McIver?
Yes, we laughed about it. So did my husband, I'll add to that.
Sure. Not trying to fuss you. Tell the jurors, who is Terry Brown, if you know?
Terry was Diane's assistant at Corey.
And in your time being friends with Ms. McIver, would that take you out to the Corey property from time to time? Had you actually been there before?
To Billy Corey's property?
The company, U.S. Enterprises.
Oh, yes, I had been there, yes.
And your knowledge about who Terry Brown was, is that just from being out there, or did you have other ways of meeting?
I met Terry, I believe I met him first at dinner with Diane and Tex and Terry through business dinner. And
how would you describe Terry and Diane's relationship?
She said he was the best assistant she ever had. He was very smart. Said the same thing that Billy Corey she didn't think he ever needed anyone, but he couldn't do without Terry. He was very good technology-wise and all of that. So.
And did you understand them from your closeness to her and being out there to be close?
State that one more time.
Sure. Did you know if they were close or not?
Terry?
Yes.
And Diane?
Yes.
Yes.
Tell the jurors, who is Kathy Johansson?
Kathy Johansson used to live in our building, the condominium building at the villas. She doesn't live there anymore.
And was Kathy a friend of Diane's, if you know?
She used to be.
And what changed about their relationship?
It was something over something at work, a working relationship that I think they had a falling out about, and they still were not speaking at the time Diane passed away.
About how long before Diane passed had this rift with Diane and Kathy Johansson happened?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm going to object to the extent, I'm not sure we laid the foundation as to how Ms. Calhoun knows about the rift, to the extent we're relying on hearsay from Mrs. McIver. I would object and move to strike her answer to the last question.
Okay.
And some of this, Your Honor, we might deal with on a break for an issue that's pending before the court, but I can move on in the meantime, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I think you can, the question you're asking, you can ask if you want, you can move to a different topic.
Did you have, just briefly on this issue, did you have personal knowledge of her sort of rift with Mrs. Johansson?
No.
I'm sorry. All right. Tell the jurors if you remember, when was the last time that you saw Diane before she passed?
The Friday before she passed on Monday morning.
And what was going on
They were going to the ranch that weekend. She had invited me to go with them. Dani Carter was going.
Sorry, I have checked again. I feel like we're still just dealing a lot in hearsay. It's what Ms. McIver said she was going to do on Friday, September 23rd.
Okay, I'm going to allow in testimony that she was invited. We can keep going.
I was going down to the fitness center to work out, and Diane was doing her stretching out in our lobby hallway, which is what she and I did. And I told her that morning, I said, I'm not going to the ranch with y'all this weekend because Les, my husband, had been on a business trip and he got back in early, so I was flying to Dallas so I could be with him.
That was a change of plans.
Yes, yes.
Did you talk to Diane again after you left?
I talked to her on Saturday. She always, if I was in Dallas or out of town, she would call and check on me and see how I was doing.
She actually called you from the ranch?
Yes.
And so did you actually go to Dallas then that weekend?
Yes, I did.
And how was it that you first learned that Diane was killed?
My husband left on Sunday, so I was there by myself in Dallas Sunday night. And when I woke up the next morning, I had text messages from Tex and from Dani to call them as soon as I got up.
And did either of the text messages communicate any other details besides just
No.
asking for a call?
No,
And who did you call first when you got up?
I called Tex first.
And tell the jury about that conversation.
He said there's, from the best I can remember now, he said there's really something bad happened, and I asked what, and he said to Diane, he said, she's not with us anymore. And I asked what happened. I said, are you kidding? What happened? And he said, she's dead, and I can't talk about it anymore on the phone. I can't talk right now. And I didn't have a flight to get back until late that afternoon, so.
Did you communicate with Mr. McIver anymore before you actually got back to Atlanta?
No.
And tell the jury what happened once you arrived back in Atlanta.
Once I got back, I went over to their condo, and there were a lot of people there. I don't even remember who all. I think I was pretty much in a daze, too. It was really hard to be traveling on an airplane with that kind of information.
And did you have any other information outside of what Mr. McIver told you?
No.
When you say there were a lot of people at their condo, whose condo are you talking about?
Tex and Diane's.
And about how many people would you say?
I would say 15, 20, maybe 20 people there.
And this is the Monday after Diane passed?
Yes, Monday night.
What do you do once you get back to your condo?
After I was over there, you mean?
Well, the first thing that you do when you come into the building, I guess.
Oh, well, I went and put my bags up and then went straight over there.
And what was, were you able to talk to the defendant once you were, Mr. McIver, once you were at the condo?
I told him how sorry I was, and he said the same thing for me, and we hugged each other in tears, but that's all I remember at the moment.
And after stopping at the McIver condo, do you go back over to your condo at some point?
Yes.
And what happens then?
Dani Jo stayed with me that night. She said she didn't want to go home, so I told her she could stay with me in my guest room at my place. So she did.
Do you know where she stayed the first night on Sunday night?
I don't know. I think she said she was at. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
If we're going to go into something that Dani Jo said, or this is going to speculate as to where Ms. Carter stayed.
That's fine. All right.
Okay, next question.
Did How many nights did Dani Jo stay?
I believe it was 2 nights.
And in your time being back in Atlanta, sort of on the condo property, do you know if there were other people in McIver condo besides Mr. McIver?
Yes.
Tell the jury, who is Annie Catterton?
I know her more as Annie Anderson, but she was a friend of Diane. She was their masseuse. She went down to the ranch a lot with them. She loved to work with the horses. She was more nutritionalist. She tried to, Diane was a healthy person, so she liked to come up with things for Diane to try as in nutrition-wise.
And did she work exclusively with Diane, or was she also working with Mr. McIver as well?
With Mr. McIver as well, and other people. I mean,
and the days after Mr. McIver's passing, was Annie Catterton at Condo?
yes,
When we talked about the phone call the text message and the phone call that you got from Mr. McIver, was that on your cell phone?
yes,
Do you remember what your cell phone number was at that time?
same as it is now.
The days, sort of going now into the week after Mr. McIver's passing, did you have the opportunity to meet anyone else who was close with Diane at your condo?
Billy Corey and Jay Grover were at my condo.
We told the jury who Billy Corey is, who's Jay Grover.
Billy owns Corey Enterprises or U.S. Industries, and Jay is his, I call him his right-hand man. He does whatever he needs to do to help Billy.
And is Jay somebody that you know that was close to Diane?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so about what day, if you remember, did they come over to your condo?
It was in the first week. I think it was maybe the 3rd or 4th day of that first week.
And what was the purpose of them coming over that day?
Jay called me and asked, Jay Grover called and asked, could they come to my condo?
I'm sorry, objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Okay, I can rephrase.
Okay, and him asking a question isn't necessarily a declaration, but if you want to rephrase it, that might help.
Sure. Just without telling us what someone else told you, did at some point you learn that they wanted to have a conversation with you and Dani Jo?
They wanted to have a conversation with Dani Jo and TEX.
Okay, not you.
No.
And did they then go ahead and come over after you all had that conversation?
Yes.
And tell the jurors what happened during that conversation, who was present?
Billy Corey was there, Jay Grover was there, Dani was there at one time, and TEX McIVer was there at one time.
All right, and I'm going to show you on the screen State's Exhibit 72.
Yes.
Can you see in State 72 where the conversation that we're talking about took place?
Yes.
And where is this?
This is in the living room of my condo.
And you said at one point Dani Jo was there, and at one point Mr. McIver was there. Tell the jurors how that came to be, the different parties got there.
Well, Billy wanted to talk to Dani to find out what her side of what happened at the accident.
And did that conversation occur?
Yes.
At some point later, then, does Mr. McIver come over?
Yes.
And why is that?
Billy wanted to know the same thing from TEX.
And when Mr. McIver came over, where was he seated in the setup that we see here on State's Exhibit 72?
He was seated in the first seat, the chair, on the
Closest to the window or closest to the...
closest to the wall, so not the window.
This one?
Yes.
Okay. And where was everyone else seated as we look here at State's Exhibit 72?
I believe Jay was in the other chair, and Billy and I were on the sofa.
All right. The markings that you see there on the screen in front of you, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Once Mr. McIver comes over into the condo, what does he say to you all?
What did Tex say?
Yeah.
Billy told him he just wanted to give.
I'm sorry, objection.
No.
Hearsay about what Mr. Corey said.
Sorry.
That's okay. And it wasn't, repeat your question, and let's focus on what Mr. McIver had to say.
It was, and I'm sorry if I phrased it wrong. My
Okay.
question is what Mr. McIver said once he came over into the condo.
Okay, he said what he remembered was that they were stopped, and the next thing he knew, the gun had gone off and there was smoke in the car. And Diane said she had been shot, and that was pretty much what was said at that point.
And as you sit here today, did Mr. McIver ever give you more information about how Diane McIver got killed or got shot on that evening?
No.
After the conversation that we've been talking about here in State's Exhibit 72, how does that conversation come to an end? How does that close, or he leave the condo eventually?
Not being able to bring other people's conversation into it, he just said, if that's all you need to know, I need to get back over to my condo. Pretty much those were his words, maybe not his exact words, but.
And this conversation happened when, in the context of when Miss McIver was killed? About how many days after?
It was in the first week after she passed.
In that same period of time, in the first week after Miss McIver passed, were there other people in and out of the condo next door, in and out of McIver's condo?
Yes.
And were some of those people family members of Mr. McIver?
Yes.
And at some point in that first week, do you learn about an inventory of Miss McIver's items?
So, objection. Could we have a little more foundation to make sure we're not getting into hearsay?
Sure.
Do you have a conversation in that first week being requested to inventory those items?
So, still hearsay, unless we can clarify who the conversation is with.
So, just I want to understand your objection. Just hypothetically, if the question is, did someone ask you to make a request for you to do an inventory? What's the truth of the matter asserted in a request? Would you please do this?
Or, I don't know how it happened, if it was a request or it was a statement that something needed to be done.
Or even a command. You must do an inventory. But I'm just trying to work through what the hearsay part of that is, as opposed to explaining what then perhaps Ms. Calhoun did next.
Well, that's not what the question. So if the question is going to be, did you do something? And we're trying to get to why she did something. That's not the question that was asked. To explain some conduct that she did.
Okay, I may have misunderstood. So why don't you ask the question again? I'll hear it again, and then I'll let you know, Ms. Calhoun. I'm sorry, we do need to work through these things.
Yes.
And that is my question, Your Honor, is was she requested to assist with an inventory at some point there in that first week after Miss McIver's passing?
No, I was not.
At some point, did you learn about, did you have personal knowledge of an inventory that took place?
So don't answer that. So that's a different question, and I think that the defense is concerned. Did you learn about, did someone assert to you that an inventory was done?
Sure, and my question isn't about a statement that she received, but personal knowledge about an event that took place.
If you want to ask her what she saw going on, you can ask her about that. Otherwise, I guess you need to lay a foundation without getting into what someone may have told Ms. Calhoun about something happening or not happening.
Sure. In your time in the condo that you shared a hallway with in that week immediately following Miss McIver's death, did you observe actions being done to inventory or catalog Mrs. McIver's belongings.
I'm sorry, I still object. I think we need a little more foundation. How can she quantify whether an action was related to doing an inventory?
I guess you just need to ask her what she saw and then see where that goes.
Right. And
Okay.
she's free to answer the question, and if she didn't see anything, she didn't see anything.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. The question assumes facts that are not in evidence, that an inventory was going on. So if she says, I saw people moving clothes in and out of the hallway, we haven't had a foundation to establish how she would know what was going on.
Okay. Again, wait.
So I don't have a problem with the question being just, what did you observe?
Okay.
The question can't be, did you observe something in connection with people doing an inventory?
I think that's a fair point.
Let me ask it this way.
Last try.
Ms. Calhoun, were you ever asked to inventory or catalog or assist with the inventory or catalog of any of Mrs. McIver's items?
No.
And do you remember, in relation to the investigation of this case, having a conversation with members of the district attorney's office? A couple different times.
Yes.
And one of those times is in January of 2017. Do you recall that?
Don't remember the exact date, but
At some point early in 2017, do you remember having a conversation with Mr. Rucker and other investigators from my office at a launch near the perimeter?
yes.
Okay. And in that conversation, do you remember investigators and other individuals from the district attorney's office having a conversation with you about a request that was made of you to inventory those items?
I don't remember that I was made a request. I remember conversation that I asked about the catalog of her clothing.
And so your testimony today before the jury is that it was not a request, that this is something that you had a conversation about with other members of the people in that other condo, or with who?
I could not. Okay.
I objected for asking her about a conversation she had with other people in the condo.
I'm talking about the conversation related to the inventory that you told Mr. Rucker about. Who was that conversation with?
That was with Tex's sister, Dixie Martin.
And when did that conversation take place?
It was in October. I'd say the maybe second or third week in October. I'm not exactly sure.
And during the conversation with Mr. Rucker and other investigators from my office, do you remember being able to describe a time frame that was closer to Mrs. McIver's passing there in that first week?
The dates are a little bit blurry right now because it's been a year and a half. I did have the conversation with his sister, and I think it was the end of October when she was there. I mean, the 1st of October, I'm sorry.
And is it possible that the conversation we've been talking about occurred in the week after Mrs. McIver's passing?
That's possible.
Did you ever assist with the inventory of items for Mrs. McIver for sale or auction or anything like that?
No, I don't think I could have done it.
Why not?
Objections relevant, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Can I answer?
Please.
I don't think at that point I could have gone through her clothes. She was just too close to me, and I was having a lot to deal with myself to deal with her death.
And did you actually attend the auction or the sale?
Yes.
And do you have anything as a result of that that belonged to Mrs. McIver?
Yes.
Objection, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Objection to relevance.
What's the relevance?
That's fine, Your Honor, I can move on.
Okay.
When we were talking about the conversation that you had with Mr. McIver's sister, Dixie, what did you ask her?
Well, objection, hearsay.
What she asked another individual, Your Honor, isn't hearsay.
Well, it's an out-of-court statement if it's being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. But you said question, so
Yes.
for now, I'll let you explore what she may have asked, as in what an inquiry was, but just real quickly.
I understand.
You don't need to object again, I'll cut it off if it goes to where it ought not. Why don't you repeat your question?
What did you ask Mr. McIver's sister, Dixie?
I asked why they were having the sale so soon.
And you remember asking that?
Yes.
We talked a lot before about the ranch property, sort of the layout and the details of it. When Diane married Mr. McIver, to your knowledge, did she come in and make any changes to the ranch? Or did she do anything to change the ranch in any way?
Yes, they built well, this was during the time they were planning their wedding. They built the saloon or house behind the house at that time.
And did she make any other changes to the ranch that you know about? Any other additions?
Her specifically, it was them together that made them. They built the pool behind the house. There was a pool there, but they tore that out, I think, and built another one.
We've been talking about a conversation that you had with members of the district attorney's office in the months that followed Mrs. McIver's passing. After this conversation we've been talking about here in your living room, did you continue a friendship with Mr. McIver?
Yes.
And as you sit here today, how would you describe the relationship that you have with him?
Friend, I haven't been able to speak to him since he's been out on.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Did I,
Yeah, let's be careful about how we move forward.
I will. Have you been able to talk to Mr. McIver since this case has been pending?
Okay, I'm a little confused. So
Yeah, why don't you two come over here, please?
Talking specifically about the conversation in January at Alon's with members of the office, Mr. Rucker, other investigators. After that conversation, did you then have a conversation with Mr. McIver?
yes,
And during that conversation, did he ask you about the content of the interview that you did with our office?
yeah,
And where did that conversation take place that you had with Mr. McIver?
in his condo.
Okay, so an in-person conversation.
Yes,
And during that conversation, did Mr. McIver take notes to your knowledge?
he was always taking notes.
And did you essentially give him the details of that interview or that conversation that you had with our office?
As much as I could remember, I didn't record it, so I don't remember everything, but yes.
Sure. Just one moment, Your Honor. The details related to how Mrs. McIver passed, how she was killed. At any point in any of those conversations, did Mr. McIver mention to you a bump?
I don't remember.
you became reacquainted when you moved into the villas? Is that a fair way to say it?
No, I met my husband at a party at the Villas in 1999, and Tex was at that same party, so that's,
Okay.
I think, the first time I'd seen him since then.
Since
Since 1997, 98.
All right.
And you were asked about Diane's relationship with Austin, and you told us that they had a very close relationship, right?
Yes,
And you told us that Diane treated Austin as if he was her own son.
yes,
And you also got a chance to observe Tex and Austin's relationship, didn't you?
yes,
And am I correct that Tex also treated Austin as if he was his own son?
yes, he did.
All right. So I'd like to show you some exhibits. You said this was a new colt that had been born.
Yes,
And then you told us in 3B that this was Diane McIver,
yes,
and Tex McIver
yes,
has his arm around her.
yes,
And this picture appears to be taken at the ranch.
yes,
And then 3C, not the best quality picture. This is Tex McIver,
Yes.
and this is Diane McIver.
Yes.
And you said it appeared as if they were dressed to go to some kind of party function?
Yes.
All right. Do those pictures fairly and accurately represent Tex McIver, Diane McIver, and Austin Schwall?
Yes.
Ms. Calhoun, 10A, you told us that this has Tex McIver and Diane McIver and Austin Schwall in it, right? Am I right?
Correct.
And Austin is wearing a baseball uniform?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know if Tex and Diane would go to Austin's baseball games?
Yes. Everyone.
Okay. And in 10B, you see Tex McIver, correct?
Yes.
And Austin Schwall is in this picture?
Yes.
Is this Mr. McIver in a Boy Scouts leader uniform?
Yes.
And Austin Schwall in a Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts uniform?
Yes.
Do you know if Mr. McIver was a true leader for Austin's Boy Scouts?
I think he was. Yes.
It's fair to say that both Diane and Tex were very involved in Austin's life, right?
Yes, they were.
Did you know that Diane was married before she met Tex?
Yes.
Right, and she got a divorce from her first husband, right?
Yes.
Was that divorce acrimonious?
And the state's objection to this line of questioning would be the same as Ms. Clark Palmer's on several of my others, which would be hearsay, and calls for a out-of-court statement as a basis for that knowledge. So the state would object to hearsay on this list.
Sure, so why don't you lay the foundation as to how this witness would know whether something that didn't involve her was acrimonious unless someone told her, and then perhaps who that someone was who told her.
Well, Your Honor, I would also say we had a lot of background information about, through this witness, about Mrs. McIver and how she started at U.S. Enterprises when she was 19 years old, which would be before Ms. Calhoun knew her, and I didn't object to any of that. So
Okay.
this follows the same.
You
It's just
did.
this one question.
Object to a lot of things, though. So there happens
I
to be
didn't object to that.
an objection here. You're going to need to lay in the face of the state's objection. You're going to need to lay a foundation.
So let me start back. Right, you told us that you knew Mrs. McIver was married before she was married to Mr. McIver, correct?
Yes.
How about, you know that Mr. McIver was married before he met Mrs. McIver?
Yes.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And at the time that you got to know Tex and Diane together, neither one of them was married at that point in time, correct?
They were planning their marriage when I met Diane.
I'm sorry, what I meant to say, they weren't married to other people.
No.
Okay. And you, we went through a lot of pictures on your direct about the ranch out in Eatonton, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And is it fair to say that Diane did some decorating at the ranch?
Yes.
Okay. Did you go out to the ranch before you knew Diane?
Yes.
Okay. And were there changes that were made to the ranch after Diane met Mr. McIver?
Yes.
Okay, including decorations, right?
Yes.
Including some additions and improvements that were made to the ranch, right?
Yes.
And those were things that either Diane did, right?
Yes.
Or things that Diane and Tex did together.
Yes.
Okay. And you spent time at the ranch with both Tex and Diane, you told us.
Yes.
And both Tex and Diane enjoyed spending time out at the ranch, correct?
Yes.
They went out there every weekend or almost every weekend
Yes.
together?
Yes.
Fair to say that Diane loved to spend time out at the ranch.
Yes, she did.
So then you were asked about what happened in September when Diane died. And you told us that Dani Jo Carter stayed with you those 2 nights.
Yes.
And then you had to ask her to leave, correct?
Yes.
And you had to ask her to leave. You know Ms. Carter, don't you?
Yes.
You know that you had to ask Ms. Carter to leave after the second night because she was drinking, correct?
Yes.
And you know that she was not supposed to be drinking.
Correct.
And when you found out she had been drinking again, you asked her to leave.
Yes.
You got to see Mr. McIver in those days and that week after Diane passed away.
Yes.
And you saw that he was crying,
Yes.
he was upset.
Yes.
You described yourself as being in a daze in the days after Diane died, right?
Yes.
It was traumatic's probably not even a strong enough word to describe what had happened, right?
Correct.
Devastating,
Yes.
because you were so close with Diane.
Yes.
You were asked if you went to the auction of Diane's, some of her belongings, and you
Yes.
said you attended that?
Yes.
That auction was in January of 2017,
I think that's right.
some 3.5, 4 months after she died?
Yes.
Okay. And then you told us about, or you were asked on direct about this, a conversation that you had with the DA's office, right?
Yes.
And then you were asked if you went, if after that you had a conversation with Mr. McIver, right?
Yes.
And you told us that you talked to him afterwards, and he was taking notes about what you told him that you had talked to the DA's office about, correct?
Yes.
He didn't ask you to go back and lie to the DA, did he?
No.
Okay. He didn't ask you to go back and change your story to the DA, did he?
No.
Okay.
Mr. McIver told you, talking about what happened, the actual shooting itself, Mr. McIver told you that the SUV stopped, correct?
Yes.
And he tells you that the gun went off. I'll rephrase.
It's redirect.
Yes, I understand. Did Mr. McIver tell you that the gun went off somehow?
Yes.
And did he ever tell you that the gun went off as a result of him squeezing the trigger?
No.
Did Mr. McIver tell you about a puff of smoke or a cloud of smoke after the shooting itself?
Yes.
And all of these details are primarily the detail that we've just been talking about. What was the date of that conversation where you got that detail from Mr. McIver?
Oh,
About.
within a week after it happened.
And was it in one of those conversations that we've been talking about there in the living room of your condo?
Yes.
All right. Is that the 20th? Would that have been the next day? So the Tuesday or Wednesday after the shooting?
I don't remember exactly the date.
So to your best recollection, it is that week that immediately followed the shooting,
Yes.
though, correct? All right. You told, we talked about Dani Jo actually staying the night at your condo. And how many nights did she stay there?
2, I believe.
Do you remember which night that conversation took place?
With her?
With the details conversation that we talked about with Mr. McIver in relation to when Dani Jo actually stayed at your house?
No, with him, it was just that week. I don't know exactly what day
And
it
would that
was.
conversation have been one of the nights that Dani Jo was your guest, was actually still staying at your condo?
Tex was not over at my place during that time at night.
And so the conversation that you told us about in the living room, I think you told the jurors that Dani Jo was there first, and then at some point later, Mr. McIver came over.
Yes, and Danny left.
And was she still a guest, an overnight guest at your condo during that conversation?
Yes.
And that would have been in the days immediately following the shooting?
Yes.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, now's the time to jot them down on a little 3x5 card. And I think we'll have you pass them to your left so Deputy Murphy can collect them down there at the corner. Ms. Cowell.
Yes.
I need you to clarify, if you can, please, when it was you recall the auction, I think you called it. When was that in relation to Ms. McIver's passing? A day later, a month later?
No, I think the auction was in, I want to say it was in January, I think.
Okay. You mentioned there being two different, you called them both auctions, two different auctions. How far apart were those?
Just days, I think.
Your recollection is both were in January?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Connery, do you have any follow-up with Ms. Calhoun in connection with that?
Just very briefly, Ms. Calhoun, we've talked a lot, drilled you on dates. Your recollection about the relationship of the two auctions to each other, could that be incorrect? The distance, the amount of time between the two auctions? Or are you?
It could have been. I mean, it was in the paper. I would think it could be gone back and looked at. I just didn't. I don't.
But our jurors aren't going to do that.
You can't do that, and I don't
Okay.
remember exactly. So,
Yeah, that's it.
Ms. Clark Palmer, anything on that topic?
No, Your Honor.
May Ms. Calhoun step down?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.